My stepmom framed me for stealing my stepsister's college fund, and my dad kicked me out without even listening. So, my estranged father got in touch with me recently, and honestly, I'm torn about whether I handled things the right way. A lot of people have been criticizing me for how I reacted, and I just want to talk it out. For some background, my father and I haven't spoken in about 8 years. I was 21 when he kicked me out. At the time, I had just finished college and was staying at home for a bit while I got on my feet and saved enough to move out on my own. My parents split up when I was 7, and when I turned 17, my dad started seeing a woman named Becca. She'd been married before too, but sadly, her husband passed away 6 years prior. She also had a daughter, Alexa, who was 4 years younger than me. From the very first time I met them both, I got this strange, uncomfortable feeling like they weren't exactly thrilled to meet me. I brushed it off at first, figuring they might just be shy or reserved. But the more time I spent around them, the more obvious it became that they weren't too fond of me. A year into their relationship, Becca and Alexa moved in with my dad, but by then I had already left for college, so I wasn't really home much. I only came back during the holidays, and even then, things always felt off. They acted weird around me, like I was some sort of intruder. My dad married Becca during my second year of college, and not much changed. They still didn't seem to like having me around. It's hard to explain, but it always felt like they were happiest when I wasn't there, like life was smoother for them without me in the picture. After I graduated, I moved back in so I could save some money before finding a place of my own. But I didn't want to live in a place where I constantly felt unwanted, so I brought it up with my dad. I tried to tell him how uncomfortable it all felt, how Becca and Alexa barely acknowledged me. But he dismissed it and said I was just imagining things, insisting they both cared about me. I gave him the benefit of the doubt and stayed. But within a couple of weeks, it was painfully clear he was wrong. They didn't just dislike me, they absolutely hated that I was living there. Becca acted like I didn't exist, and Alexa? She seemed to go out of her way to irritate me or start arguments over nothing. I brought it up to my dad a few more times, but since they acted completely different around him, he just chalked it up to me being overly sensitive or them needing time to adjust. This went on for a while, and no matter how much I kept to myself, they just kept poking at me, making everything harder than it needed to be. Eventually, I gave up trying to talk to my dad about it. He clearly wasn't listening. All I wanted was to keep my head down, save money, and get out. But instead, I got kicked out in the most humiliating way possible. One day, I left around noon to go house hunting with a few friends because, at that point, Becca and Alexa were driving me up the wall. I got back home in the evening and found my dad already there, looking furious. The moment I walked in, he told me to pack my things and get out. I was completely blindsided. When I asked what was going on, he hit me with this awful accusation, saying he never imagined I'd become such a desperate, pathetic person. I was stunned. I had no idea what he was even talking about. I felt the sting of tears because his words were so cold and cruel. But instead of listening to anything I had to say, he just told me to cut the act and leave. Then Becca stormed into the room, yelling that I had destroyed Alexa's future. She screamed that I did it out of jealousy, unable to accept that my dad had moved on with his life. As she kept ranting, I started to piece together what they were accusing me of. Apparently, I had stolen from them. They claimed I used a car they'd lent me for emergencies to buy luxury items. Becca said I had come to her weeks earlier, told her I was short on cash, and she added me to the account where she kept Alexa's college savings. According to her, I went on a shopping spree and nearly wiped out the account buying expensive bags, shoes, and designer clothes. But none of that ever happened. She was flat out lying. I asked for proof, demanded to see any real evidence. But my dad said there was no need for that. They had already searched my room and found everything to confirm the story. He claimed they discovered all the purchased items hidden under my bed. When I pointed out that I never even had access to that account, he shot back that Becca had taken me off the card that same morning after a call from the bank. I begged him to call the bank and verify it properly, but he shut me down, saying he didn't need more proof to know what kind of person I was. He called me a disgusting thief. I tried so hard to defend myself, to tell him that none of it was true, that Becca had set me up, but he refused to listen. In the end, I had no choice but to leave. After that day, I cut off all contact. My dad made it crystal clear where I stood in his life. After everything he said and did, I couldn't see a way back. After everything that happened, I had no desire to ever speak to my father again. I stayed with a friend for a few days while I figured things out, and soon after that, I managed to get into my first apartment. Money was tight for a while. Those first few months were rough, but I eventually got on my feet. Life's been pretty good since then. In fact, I'm even getting ready to buy my own house in a few months. For 8 solid years, I've completely avoided any interaction with my father. I steered clear of every single event on his side of the family like they were contagious. I just had no interest in ever seeing him again. My mom and I, though, stayed in contact. She actually cut ties with him around the same time I did. She wasn't okay with how he treated me either. But now? Lately, it seems like she's starting to take his side, and that's what's got me all confused. A few days ago, out of nowhere, my dad showed up at my house. I was caught off guard, but I was curious enough to open the door and hear him out. He told me he got my address from my mom. He said he came to apologize for everything. Apparently, he just found out recently that my stepmother had made up the entire story about the theft. According to him, Becca had only done it to find someone to blame for draining Alexa's college fund. For years, he said, she'd been taking advantage of him financially, and he had no clue because he thought he was simply being a supportive husband. But recently, Becca had gotten into a fight with her own parents, and in the fallout, they reached out to my dad to come clean about what really happened. Turns out, I'd been right all along. Becca was the one who bought all those designer clothes and bags. She was using the money herself but planted everything in my room to make it look like I had stolen from her and Alexa. To top it off, she had her own parents pose as fake bank employees and call my dad to confirm the story. It was a whole elaborate setup. The real reason behind it? She had already burned through the college fund Alexa's late father had left behind thanks to her over-the-top lifestyle. But she didn't want to ask my dad to cover the expenses outright, probably because she didn't want to look like a gold digger. And apparently, she also hated my guts, thought my bond with my father would get in the way of her perfect little family setup. So, she plotted to get me out of the picture and manipulate my dad into footing the bill for Alexa's college. And when the plan worked, she got exactly what she wanted. Her parents stayed quiet about all of this for 8 years. But after their recent fight, they finally decided to let the truth come out. So now my dad had filed for divorce a few weeks ago, using the same old lawyer he had always relied on. And here he was, standing on my porch, saying he wanted to make things right with me. Then came the kicker. He said he knew that one of my close friends had a father who was a highly respected divorce attorney, and he wanted me to help him get in touch. Not only that, but he wanted me to ask them for a discount on his behalf because Becca and her lawyer had filed some outrageously one-sided petition. My dad's old lawyer didn't want to touch the case, it was too messy and complicated, and the guy was looking to retire. I was so shocked at his nerve that I actually laughed. He really thought he could just show up, say sorry, and ask for a favor like that? I couldn't believe it. I flat out told him no. If he wanted to hire a good lawyer, he could reach out himself like any normal person and pay what everyone else pays. It wasn't my problem that his old lawyer bailed, and I definitely wasn't about to step in. After that, I shut the door right in his face and told him to leave before I called the police. I thought that would be the end of it. But not long after, my mom called. And to my surprise, she was not on my side this time. She told me I was being unfair, that what I was doing wasn't right. I couldn't understand why she was defending him now, after everything. I was already upset, but that pushed me over the edge. She said everyone makes mistakes, and my father was only human. That I shouldn't expect him to be perfect just because he was my dad. But that's not even what bothered me most. I didn't blame him for trusting his wife. I get that people can be deceived. What cut deep was that he trusted her over me. His own daughter. He knew me, he raised me, and still, the second he heard something awful about me, he believed it without a doubt. He didn't even give me a chance to defend myself. He called me disgusting. He called me a lowlife. And even now, 8 years later, I can't forget those words. And let's be real, if he didn't need my help, I doubt he would have shown up at all. That's what really stings. He wasn't just there to apologize. He came because he wanted something. It was the same behavior I'd always resented in him. He only reached out when it served him. I tried to explain all this to my mom, but she just kept saying that him admitting he was wrong, even if it took years, meant something. She said I should rise above it, forgive him, and help him out. Be the bigger person, as she put it. But here's the thing, even if I wanted to help, I don't think I really could. Yeah, my friend and I are close, and maybe I could talk to his dad. But the guy's the top divorce lawyer in town. He doesn't come cheap, and I can't exactly promise he'd lower his fees just because of me. So why would I commit to something I can't guarantee? My mom and I ended up going back and forth for nearly half an hour. By the end of it, we were both frustrated and tired of the conversation. By the time that phone call with my mom ended, it was clear she just wasn't willing to see things from my perspective. I didn't even understand what she was getting at, it all sounded so off to me. Nothing she said really made sense, and now, on top of being estranged from my father, I've stopped talking to my mother too. And I can't help but wonder if I messed up somewhere. I don't feel like I did anything wrong when it came to my father. But the way my mom reacted has left me second-guessing everything. Did I go too far by refusing to help him? Should I have been more open to hearing him out? Update 1. After thinking it through, I've decided I need distance from both of them. A lot of people who commented made some great points. Thank you for that, by the way. You helped me see that I don't owe my dad anything. After the way he treated me, his so-called apology only came when he needed something from me. If he hadn't been in a bind, I doubt he would have shown up at all. So yeah, I've decided to keep my distance. As for my mom, I really don't know what's gotten into her. After all these years of having no contact with him, suddenly she's defending him? I honestly don't even want to know what's going on there. During that phone call, I asked her point blank if she'd been talking to my dad. She swore up and down that she hadn't spoken to him in the last 8 years, not once since I got kicked out. But she said he reached out to her the day I slammed the door in his face. She told me he had been crying, and since he's never been the emotional type, she felt compelled to listen. Apparently, he told her everything. That's how she learned about the fake accusations and the apology attempt. But beyond that, she claimed they hadn't talked at all in nearly a decade. I'm finding that a little hard to believe, though. Back when they divorced, they stayed on friendly terms and co-parented me pretty well. This whole situation seems like it may have stirred up old connections, or maybe even feelings. I don't know. What I do know is that her reaction made me realize she doesn't know me as well as I thought. If she truly understood the kind of person I am, what I've been through, she wouldn't have lashed out at me for not forgiving my dad instantly. So yeah, for now, I'm stepping away from both of them. Cutting off my dad is easy, I've already done that for 8 years. But distancing myself from my mom? That one hurts. For so long, she was the only real family I had. Losing her too is a lot. I'm giving her a week. If she comes around and apologizes for how she handled things, great. But if she doesn't, I might have to walk away from her for good, and even thinking about that breaks my heart. Still, I have to protect my peace. I have to take care of myself first. Update 2. So, the week's not over yet, but my mom did reach out. Unfortunately, it wasn't to apologize. I hadn't blocked her, part of me still hoped she'd want to make things right, and yesterday she texted me asking if she could come by and talk in person. She said she thought it would be better to clear the air face to face. I agreed because, deep down, I wanted that closure too. I wanted to believe we could sort things out. When she arrived, I was kind and polite. I really thought she was going to say sorry. She started off by saying she'd been reflecting on our last conversation and admitted that maybe she hadn't tried hard enough to understand me. She said she was there to try again. That gave me hope. She asked me to explain how I felt one more time, so I did, calmly and clearly. I hoped that if she could just hear me out, she'd finally understand and offer an apology. But once I finished, she hit me with something I wasn't expecting. She said now that we'd talked it through, she thought I should have the same kind of conversation with my father. She said I had handled things with grace and maturity, and my dad deserved to hear me out too. She told me that even when he thought I had stolen from Becca, he still didn't call the police, and he even stopped her from doing so. That, in her eyes, was his way of protecting me. And because of that, I at least owed him a chance to talk. She told me she had raised a kind-hearted daughter, and she believed I was strong enough to rise above the hurt. But I told her flat out she clearly doesn't know me as well as she thinks. I told her there's no forgiveness left in me when it comes to my father. After the way he treated me, I don't owe him anything, not even an explanation. I was upset. I had let her into my home hoping we could reconnect, and instead she was just trying to sell me on the idea of making peace with someone who once called me a thief and threw me out like trash. And the worst part? She still didn't apologize. So I told her that unless she wanted to apologize, I didn't want to hear from her again. That should have been the end of it, but she started getting anxious and fidgety. Then she blurted out the real reason she came. She said she couldn't leave until I agreed to talk to my dad because she had promised him that she would convince me to give him a chance. She had made a commitment to him, and she needed me to help her keep it. She said she just wanted me to have a proper conversation with him just once so we could work things out. That was the final straw. She told me she didn't want to lose me. She said she was truly sorry that I felt like both of my parents had let me down. But then she started pushing the idea that, at the end of the day, they were still my parents and I should forgive them, that the few things they did wrong were nothing compared to all the good they'd done over the years, and that had to count for something. Honestly, I thought that was a ridiculous thing to say. I told her flat out that it was her mistake for making promises to my father that she couldn't even guarantee she could keep. That wasn't on me. It wasn't my responsibility to help her follow through on something I never agreed to in the first place. I asked her to leave. Again. And that's when she finally admitted something that made my blood boil. She said she couldn't leave because my dad was sitting outside in the car, waiting for her to call him in. She didn't want to disappoint him. That was the last straw. I lost it. I absolutely blew up at her. I screamed, told her she had no right to do that after I had made it crystal clear that I wanted no contact with my father. She'd gone behind my back, brought him to my home like I was some stubborn child she could corner into forgiving him. I yelled. I told her she was a terrible mother and that I was completely done with her. She started crying, but I didn't care. I was too angry to feel anything else. She kept saying she was sorry, that she didn't mean for things to go this way, but I didn't want to hear it. After about 15 minutes of shouting back and forth, she finally left. As she walked out, I yelled after her that if she or my father ever came back, I wouldn't hesitate to call the police. Right after that, I blocked her on everything. And now, I'm seriously thinking about speaking with a lawyer about getting a protective order, just in case either of them decides to try something like this again. Update 3 is something completely insane happened today, and I honestly don't even know who to talk to about it, so here I am. I need to get this off my chest. I had the day off and planned to just relax at home, do nothing, maybe clean a bit. But then Becca and Alexa showed up at my door. Yeah, that's not even the craziest part. When I saw them standing outside, I was furious. I told them to leave immediately and even had my phone in my hand, ready to call the police. But Becca said she wasn't there to start trouble. She claimed she came to tell me the truth about my father and why he so desperately needed my help. She still had that same nasty, smug attitude she always had, so clearly she hadn't changed in the slightest. I had zero interest in anything she had to say at first. I told her flat out I didn't want to hear it. But then she mentioned something that caught me completely off guard. She said she knew why my mom had suddenly taken my dad's side after 8 years of no contact. That got my attention. I was stunned she even knew about that. Curiosity got the better of me, and after a little hesitation, I agreed to hear her out. She refused to come inside, though, said she wasn't staying long and didn't want to set foot in my house. Alexa stood quietly next to her while she told me everything. According to Becca, after her parents told my father the truth about what happened 8 years ago, they all got into a huge fight. That's when he decided to file for divorce. Apparently, Becca had cut her parents off financially because my father had been giving her less money lately, and she wasn't happy about that. She'd been used to a certain lifestyle and had gotten greedy. So when the money slowed down, she did some digging. And guess what she found? Turns out, my father was cheating on her with my mother. Yeah. That's why he had been saving money on the side and not telling Becca why. He was planning to leave her, and she figured it out. Her plan was to hang on, bide her time, and then file for divorce herself when it worked in her favor. But my dad beat her to it. Once they both found out about each other's secrets, it was full-on chaos. Under normal circumstances, my dad probably could have gotten out of the marriage without giving Becca much. She hadn't worked in a decade. But because he was also guilty of cheating, she had leverage. So she had her lawyer draw up a petition that heavily favored her. That's why the divorce has turned so nasty. Now, the reason Becca showed up today was because my dad had apparently threatened her over the phone a few days ago. He told her to back off, saying that I was going to put him in touch with a top divorce attorney, and if that happened, she'd be screwed. He was bluffing, of course. But Becca didn't want to take the chance, so she came here to cover her bases and make sure I wasn't helping him. I was completely floored by everything she said. But at the same time, a few things finally made sense, like why my mom had suddenly flipped sides. Once Becca had finished her little speech, she told me it was my choice whether or not I wanted to help my dad. Then she and Alexa left. For the first time in her life, Becca had actually done something useful. And oddly enough, I was thankful. After all of this, there's no chance I'll ever talk to either of my parents again. My mother tried to gaslight me, tried to make me feel like I was wrong for not forgiving him, also she could cover her own secrets. And my father? He's every bit the manipulative coward I remember. They're made for each other, honestly. They can keep each other. As for me, I'm staying far away. And I'm grateful I had the sense to cut them out before they could do any more damage. Update 4, hi again. It's been a couple of months since I last posted, and a few folks wanted to know how I'd been doing, so here's the update. Things have been going really well. I'm on my own, living peacefully, and honestly, I'm happy. I do miss my mom every now and then, it's hard not to. She was the only family I really had for so long. But when I start feeling that ache, I remind myself of how she turned her back on me and tried to manipulate me. That reminder helps. I heard through some extended family that my dad's divorce is finalized. Apparently, he and my mom are back together now. Some of my relatives even got invited to their wedding, which is supposedly happening in a couple of weeks. They passed that info along to me, in case I wanted to make things right and attend. But I don't care. I have no interest in patching things up. I'm better off without them in my life. Right now, I've got peace, stability, and freedom. That's more than I ever had growing up. And that's enough for me.